that me or you? The January 23rd, 2024 regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt this meeting, please either switch it to silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary, Kathy Zarnicki, to conduct the roll call, please.
Mr. Buechner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So on to approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move.
Mr. Faison, and seconded by Mr. Buechner. All right, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr.
Okay.
Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes,
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
thank you. And now moving on to approval of the minutes from January 9th, 2024. Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Lambert.
I support.
Okay, support by Mr. Faison. We're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes,
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
okay, thank you. So moving on to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Is anyone here who would like to make public comment for items that are not on the agenda? All right, seeing no one getting up, we will move on to our item 5, the preliminary site plan. Approval JPLN 2023-0028, proposed John R. Commons Townhome Development, west side of John R., north of Big Beaver, PIN 88-20-23-476-017, Section 23, zoned multifamily residential zoning district. And I think, yes, sorry.
Mr. Carlisle is going to make the presentation.
Okay.
I just want to add, we requested from the developer that they provide us with 3D color renderings, and we got them late in the day today, so I didn't have a chance to forward them to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
But they've been incorporated into the presentation, so we did have a chance to do that. So
Okay.
if you pay close attention to the display, I usually nod off when he presents, so I'm going to pay attention. But they've been incorporated into the presentation today.
Okay, awesome. We'll make special notice.
I also nod off during my presentation too, so. Thank you and good evening to the Planning Commission. Tonight before you is an application for a proposed multifamily building. The site is located north of Big Beaver, west of John R. It's just north of the Kroger's and the Buffalo Wild Wings hockey facility. The subject site is approximately 12 acres in the area. The site is currently vacant, however, a portion of the front end adjacent to John R. is used for stormwater detention. The site is currently one parcel, and there are no existing structures on site. And we do note the site has been zoned for multifamily use for approximately 28 years. The application in front of you includes 118 units. These are located in 20 different buildings. It's a permitted use in the MF multifamily district, and we do note access is via Nancy Bostic Drive and through the backside of the Troy Sports Complex. We do note that the previous plan was submitted for this site. It was in 2019. The plan previously included 247 units. At that time, the applicant was seeking a rezoning to get those 247 units. In the meeting on April 23rd, 2019, the Planning Commission voted 7-2 to recommend denial of the rezoning to the City Council. Upon that recommendation by the Planning Commission, the City Council denied that rezoning. The site plan before you tonight has significantly changed since the last one that the Planning Commission reviewed for this site. The applicant has reduced the number of units from 247 to 118 units. And by doing so, they are not seeking a rezoning. They are keeping it the current multifamily zoning designation. The other significant changes are they've aligned the south side of the site with 5 apartment buildings. Before, they were perpendicular to that drive that goes behind the Troy Sports Complex. They've reshaped the detention pond from the previous submittal. And the other most significant change is they significantly reduced the building height to a total of 24 feet 2 inches. With regards to site arrangement, again, 118 units distributed in 20 buildings. There are 5 buildings that are parallel to the northern property line. There are 5 buildings that are parallel to the back side of the Troy Sports Complex, and there are 10 interior buildings that are perpendicular to those that kind of align the northern and southern property line. One of the issues that we look at with multifamily developments, especially as adjacent to single family, is the relationship between the setback and the building height. A requirement of the multifamily district is that the setback for the multifamily has to be equal to or greater than the proposed height of the building and at least 25 feet setback. So in this case, the setback is 30 feet along the northern property line. This is a 30-foot setback, and the height of the structure as measured by the zoning ordinance is 24 feet 2 inches. So they do comply with that height to setback ratio. We do also want to highlight the buffering along the northern property line. Again, just to be cognizant, these are all single-family homes north of the property line. There is a 30-foot buffer between the edge of the building and the northern property line. In addition, they've also put in a berm that is approximately 3 feet in height, as well as 2 rows, double rows you can see there, of landscaping to ensure there's adequate buffering between the northern property line and the units themselves. Along the southern property line with buffering, we do note, again, this is the location of the Troy Sports Complex Drive. They provide between 30 and 35 feet of separation between the property line and the buildings. We do note that there's only 1 row of landscaping, and from the site plan, it indicates that there's no fencing and or wall or anything kind of as a physical barrier. So we do ask for consideration of some other physical barrier or buffering in addition to just a single row of landscaping. We don't think that's going to be sufficient with regards to the amount of traffic and parking and odor and noise and dumpster locations, et cetera, that occur behind the Troy Sports Complex. Access and circulation was a major point of discussion at the last Planning Commission meeting for this proposed development. Again, I want to note they have significantly reduced the number of units to 118. The points of access remain one off of Nancy Bostic Drive, which is located off John R., as well as a second full access point here, again, to the southwest corner of the site adjacent to the Troy Sports Complex. And there is a full circulation around the entire site. Steve Deering from OHM is here to address any traffic and circulation issues that may arise. Landscaping and parking. With regards to landscaping, the landscaping is compliant. They are removing woodland trees and a landmark tree, and they have provided the required mitigation on site. And we do note that they are required to have 236 spaces. They are providing 277 spaces, so approximately 41 spaces above the ordinance requirement. Typically, those are requested by the Planning Commission for guest parking and overflow parking that may occur in this development. The applicant has provided elevations. The elevations include brick material and siding. We do note that the siding material was not indicated. We're not sure what type of siding they're proposed, but these are the proposed elevations. And again, I'll go through some renderings that were provided by the applicant. This is John R. This is a gentleman walking along John R. here. This is Nancy Bostic Drive, and then this is kind of the existing stormwater detention facility, and this is the development that's set back off John R. This is a view, I believe, of the northern property line, and this is the buffering and screen that would take place along the northern property line. Is that correct, Greg? Is that the northern property line dimension? Okay. So this is along the northern property line, adjacent to single family. Is that, Greg, is that from? This is from the rear? This is single family into the development? Okay, so this is from the Troy Sports Complex. Troy Sports Complex into the development with, again, those single row of landscaping I mentioned earlier. With regards to standards, the Planning Commission should consider the site plan standards, which those three that the Planning Commission is very familiar with. In conclusion, the Planning Commission should review the development and confirm the site plan standards have been met. And if so, we recommend that the applicant add additional screening along the southern property line to accommodate potential impacts of the Troy Sports Complex. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yep, go ahead, Mr. Faison.
So Ben, I just had a question on the ingress and egress. So Nancy Bostic, I think the site plan said that's 40 feet wide? Well, here's my question. What's the width of a typical two-lane road? And do the roads in and out of this complex match that width?
So a typical public right-of-way is 60 feet wide. There are exceptions to that where they're less than that or more than that. A typical residential street from back of curb to back of curb is 28 feet. We've also have private roads that are, the easement's 40 feet wide, and that street is within that 40-foot easement.
Thank you.
So in other words, it's a private road, the Bostic Drive?
It would, I don't have the GIS up on my screen, but it would meet the standard for a private road.
Okay.
Nancy Bostic is actually a public road.
Yeah, it's-
That little section.
Yeah, just this little stub off John R. It's this little
Yep.
stub to get back here. That's public, and then the remaining portion is just a private, essentially a private drive behind the Troy Sports Complex. But this little section, this little stub again is public.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, Mr. Carlisle, on page 8 of your report, it states there that bicycle parking required is 2, but it says provided is 0. Is that a mistake there, or?
No,
Do we need-
no, they indicate that they're doing, but there's no common bike parking. The bike parking is going to be located within the individual garages of each unit. I guess the Planning Commission could require more centralized common bike parking, but they know that they're going to accommodate bike parking through individual spaces in the garages.
Thank you.
Mr. Fox?
Were there any further renderings provided that gave a little bit more context for the green spaces that they added on the south end of the property? Because the report references that they added them versus the last submission,
Yeah.
but it's kind of hard to get a feel for them.
So and the additional green spaces they added, Mr. Fox, were not shown on the site plan. They were only shown in the landscape plan. Let me go back to the landscape plan. Oops, going the wrong way. Well, I guess, I mean, you can kind of see them, and they're in these two locations. Were the ones that they had added. And again, those show up on, again, I'll highlight here and here. Those show up on the landscape plan. They don't show up on the site plan.
And just to clarify, because from this view, it looks like they're paved. That isn't accurate?
Yeah, they're, again, if I can go to the landscape plan. They're these spaces right here. So they're kind of
okay.
outdoor patio, common, I think a fire pit kind of, that kind of use space.
Okay, thank you.
35 feet.
Does anyone else have any questions? I had one question about the garbage. Did I understand correctly that there's no dumpsters, that everybody takes their garbage out?
Roll out in the garage, roll out from the garage and place in front of the garage and have the trash pickup come pick it up.
Okay. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and call the applicant up.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Dennis Bostic, the owner of this sports complex as well as all that property. I grew up there. We moved in 1957 and have maintained the property in my family and hope to get this approved and so we can move on and develop that. And I will have my professionals answer any questions that you may have, and I'll answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you, Mr. Bostic.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Brian?
How you doing? I'm Greg Bono with PEA,
Greg,
the
I'm
civil,
sorry.
no problem, civil engineer for the project. This is Brian.
Yeah, sorry, sorry.
I'm Brian Nieper from Brian Nieper Architecture in Birmingham.
Did you want to, was there anything else you wanted to present, or was that,
Oh, yeah, no, that's,
that was it?
yeah, that's it. We're here to answer any questions. you
Okay,
guys have.
perfect.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Yep.
Mr. Bostic, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. Nancy Bostic Drive, it was platted years ago, correct?
It was part of the complex at the time that, it was all one, it was a major platted subdivision
Okay.
from 1912, I
Yeah.
think it was. And then when we did the development, Larry Kiesling was in your seat at that time. He wanted to have access to that residential, the multi. So they made that a public street, that little section. So it could never be closed off and landlocked. And that was,
That's helpful. My point was, there's some history to that street being located where it is and being that width. That decision was made
way back.
way back.
27 years ago.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
A question. So, Mr. Bostic, I was curious, you mentioned you own both properties.
Yes.
Do you see them interacting together? Like, for example, do you have pedestrian connections that you're contemplating between the residential property and the commercial property to the south?
Yes, I think it makes quite a nice complex for people that can shop there. You know, we have all the amenities on site. They can go to the ice rink. So yeah, I do see it connected.
So can you, is it on your plan? Because I didn't notice it when I looked at the plan. It seemed like your residential was just encircled.
I think I think we're showing, Ben, if you have that.
What are you looking for in particular?
Do we have a couple different spots where
It shows the commercial.
the pedestrians, yeah, so we've kind of got, yeah,
Okay.
one kind of central there, and then one kind of over towards the end where it makes sense for pedestrians to cross to access the grocery store and that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Biekner?
I have a couple questions, and whoever answers will be fine. So you went from 200 and some units down to 100 and some units. What was the change? Are they slightly bigger? Went from 1 bedroom to 2 bedroom? Generally, how did that change?
Actually, the original plan that we had was including 5 acres behind the San Marino Club. And I'm not sure if you were on the Planning Commission at that point, but we had an unofficial presentation to the Planning Commission, and they really liked it. They liked the whole plan with the apartments. We were going to build very high-end luxury apartments with a clubhouse and pool, and then I won't mention names, but somebody in the past government here said you should not include that 5 acres behind San Marino. That's zoned single-family residential, and I wouldn't recommend that you have that part of the rezoning in the complex. And so we decided to drop that out. I had another apartment planner that was involved with us, and he says, well, I think you'd be okay. I can show you how to reposition all this and still have that complex on the original site that we're currently showing. And so we presented that, and that didn't go over well. Said we were going to put too many units on too few of a site, too small of a site. And so we really dropped it. We did not even appear, the Planning Commission, I think, voted it down 7-2, and we did not even pursue the next step in front of council. I assume they had their meeting and voted it down at council, but but we weren't there. So that's really what happened. And now we're back with just the entitlement. It seems like the Planning Commission was not too excited about the downsized site that we were presenting. Now, we still own that other 5 acres behind the San Marino. And it would be my desire to go back to that original plan that everybody liked, including that. I'd love to do that with a high-end apartment complex with all the amenities. This doesn't support the amenities that the apartment complex would. And the reason that we were looking at it was going to be an urban residential zoning, is that?
You are.
Yeah, you are.
And so that does take a rezone. This does not, because it's by entitlement, but.
Okay. My next question, and I'm super familiar with your commercial zone. I've been there many, many times. I like it a lot. Are you, and it's kind of a rhetorical question, are you worried about ingress, egress, people coming out that west side, going through your complex? Because that's going to happen a lot. Are we worried at all about safety?
No, that's a direct route. They can get to Big Beaver, and it doesn't concern me.
Okay. Then my other question is, have you talked to the residents on the north side? Are they all aware of what's coming? And
we did for the last development, the apartment complex that we were doing, and everybody was on board.
Okay.
They didn't mind it at all, and we had some meetings at the ice rink in the meeting room there, and had really no opposition. And I don't think we hardly had anybody, maybe one lady that lived in the north part of Troy that was opposed to it, and I was told that she's opposed to everything. I don't know the lady's name, but outside of that, we had no opposition really, other than the fact that we downsized the site, and much rather go back to that, but I'm not sure if you guys would support it. And
Thank you.
I think council would.
Thank you for answering my question.
Oh, my pleasure. Anybody else?
Yeah, Ms. Malala-Holly?
Thank you for coming.
Certainly.
For one, of course, I was not there on the Planning Commission in 2019, but what I do see is the reduction in the number of units, and that is encouraging because of how it appears. But I do have a couple questions for you. The very first one is for the houses that will be sitting along the 16 to 20 that sits right next to the parking lot and the Kroger. Now, I know that there is a plan for additional screening, but in terms of noise, in terms of garbage, in terms of deliveries from trucks, I am not convinced that you will have enough buffer for the residents. One thing is cutting down on the light, and the second thing is reducing the noise. What are your thoughts on the buffering that you are intending to provide between the houses and the parking lot? And will that be sufficient for anybody who is going to reside there?
We'll do whatever it takes to make it more feasible and attractive to the potential people that'll be in those units.
So let me ask you a question. If I am the resident and if I'm standing at the second floor window and I look out, what will I potentially see across? What will I see?
If you're looking to the south?
Towards the parking lot.
I'm sorry.
South.
Towards the south, yeah.
Looking to the south, what you're going to see. Well, you're going to see the back of the ice rink with most of those units, and you're going to see the site of Kroger. If you're all the way at that east end.
Are there any parking light spillage that might throw into the homes?
Lights from the parking lot?
From the parking lot, from the buildings?
Our lights are on the building. We don't have any that are shining out that way. They're attached to the back of the ice rink, and they shine down on the parking lot, not out there.
So the buffering that you're intending to provide, you believe that it will be enough to screen the light?
Absolutely. There will be no lights shining from the ice rink property out to there.
And what about noise?
Noise? Just any noise that, people coming and going like anywhere. Whether it's your neighbor in your home you live in, or people coming in and out of the ice rink, or, anybody that lives next to a commercial project is going to, there will be times when there's going to be a lot of activity. But people know that going in. It's not like we're building the ice rink and the Kroger after the fact. So anybody that comes in there will understand what they're coming into.
Okay. My second question to you is regarding the detention pond. I do see that there is a strip of pathway that leads from this development onto John R. There's connectivity there. But how about a pathway that runs around the detention pond? In all likelihood, I take it, I'm assuming here, so let me know if that is a correct assumption here, that this is not going to be a wet pond year-round. It is going to be dry, pretty much.
Correct.
So what's stopping you from creating a pathway that will take residents along the detention pond and maybe have a couple benches and have a gathering space, things that would kind of increase the amenities on this development?
That could happen easily. I mean, it pumps out. It's not a retention, it's detention. So it's dry. And I don't know if anybody wanted to go out and sit there and look at a dry pond. We can make that happen.
But in terms of amenities, we don't have much being offered presently.
Yeah, I can help out with this question too. I mean, we thought about that when we were laying out the site, and we were just trying to utilize the existing sidewalk that's already there on John R. as to basically finish the connection of the loop around it. And it's, there's trees along there, but you can easily see and visually enjoy whatever it is there. To Dennis's point, we can add some benches or some other things if people, want spots to sit and maybe read or something like that. That's not an issue at all. But that was our mindset. In lieu of creating some separate sidewalk around the pond itself, we were just kind of utilizing the sidewalk that was already there along John R. and just making connections. So.
Yeah, I see the connections definitely. But in terms of amenities, am I looking at it correctly that there are two spaces that is 30 to 35 feet of two spaces, which is your outdoor recreational space? Aside from that, is there anything else currently on the plan?
We have the courtyard green belts that are in between the interior sets of buildings there. We've got some green space on the southwest corner, which we were going to dedicate to a dog park. And then with the outdoor amenities along the south side with outdoor seating. And then the internal sidewalk that loops all the way around into the pond as kind of a passive recreation for residents can, do laps or whatever, walking around there. So we we try to give people lots of different options for, any kind of like passive recreation activity there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Fox?
At the intersection of 15 Maple Road and Coolidge Highway, there is a complex that has a restaurant called Aldana's in it. Right behind that commercial complex is a set of apartments that I lived in for about 3 years. And what they used to divide the commercial from the residential is that they had a brick wall that was probably about 15 feet high, if I had to estimate it. That made light a non-issue, at least from my experience living there. Sound, it's going to go over a wall. But I was curious your thoughts on, would you be willing to explore something a little more solid, like a brick wall or something a bit more to make sure that light doesn't filter through to the residents on the south end of the property?
I mean, I don't know I've ever seen wall of that height.
I'm very bad
constructed-
at estimating heights. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, but we appreciate landscaping more because it just kind of grows in height over time. And with light, and we chose more of a evergreen planting, so you get the effect year round. So that was our thought as to that being kind of one of the better applications.
That's my preference as well, because I don't really care for a big brick wall that kind of looks like you're gonna, I don't know what we call it, but
Much easier to maintain also.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Yep, Mr. Lambert.
I mentioned already in my question, Mr. Carlisle, about the bicycle parking. So are there plans for multiple places on the site for people to park bicycles, or what are the plans for that?
Yeah,
Right, so that-
we just anticipated the residents being able to utilize the garage. Each unit has its own two-car garage, so they will just keep bicycles in the garage and use them as necessary, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Kran?
Quick question. So these townhomes, are they rentals or are they homeowners?
it'll really be a function of the market, dictated by market.
Okay.
It could be either.
Could
but-
be either, okay.
Mr. Tagle?
A couple of questions. First of all, talk to me about the building materials. What are you planning as far as, I think the presentation was that there's siding, but there's no indication of, other than horizontal and vertical siding. What's the plan?
Architecturally, we're looking at a very contextual building. It's really trying to blend into the context of the Troy neighborhood look. So it's a brick base around the entire building, then like a fiber cement hardy board type siding material. We put a blend of horizontal and vertical sidings to give some interest. We tried to break down the scale and the massing of the buildings so it has kind of a familiar rhythm that would match a typical Troy neighborhood. Then asphalt shingles.
Okay. There are some Troy neighborhoods that probably could look better than they look, but I'm assuming you're not targeting that look.
Right.
Questions about the planning a little bit and the opportunities. Tell me about the different pattern of sidewalk between, or in the courtyard, between the entrances of the two groups of buildings. On the west side of the buildings, it almost looks like there's some type of loop or landscape, little landscape area, but on the right side or the east side block of buildings, I'm assuming I'm seeing just a pretty straight sidewalk closer to the buildings. Am I picking that up correctly?
I didn't fully follow you, but I
Okay,
think the west side,
If you look at each pair, I mean, there are 1, 2, 3, there are 4 pairs of buildings facing each other down the central spine. On the west side of those pairs, the sidewalk pattern is different than on the east side of that area, that central area.
I think it's just a perspective that you're not seeing, because we're kind of looking towards the west, so you're just not seeing the full sidewalks. The roof's blocking it from that perspective, but
yeah, I think the first group from the right there, the intention was to just have a courtyard feel where everybody has a sidewalk that's approximately 3 to 5 feet from their porch, and then it's kind of connected in a miniature kind of loop there.
So is the landscape plan more accurately depicting the sidewalks as opposed to this rendering?
Yes.
Mr. Carlisle speaking.
Can I
They should.
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Thank you.
Carlisle.
Yeah, it's the, Mr. Daigle, this is the illusion of a rendering in the view that you're looking at, this one. So,
I appreciate that comment. I disagree with you. That rendering is not an illusion. It's showing that sidewalk with green space,
Yep.
more green space on the west side building than on the east side.
and the site plan itself, or
No, I'm with the landscape plan.
the landscape
Shows
plan.
two straight sidewalks.
Right, and so I think the rendering was incorrect.
Correct.
Yes.
I would challenge you to do much better in that green space. And there are several ways that I can see that you could soften that green space with more vegetation, more vertical vegetation, maybe to create a little bit of screening so you're not looking right across from your neighbor. And I don't even know what is the distance between those buildings?
It appears to be about 40 feet is my guess.
50, face-to-face, the porches kind of extend a little bit, but they're generally 50
About
feet.
50 feet. So you've got plenty of room to maybe do something a little bit more creative in there. Maybe the walkway, there's more of a meandering walkway. There's opportunities, as we've heard about, maybe some seating areas or some internal areas that could just break that up and not just two straight sidewalks to get you from your front porch to the roadway. And the other thing, I guess the two amenities that you have along the south property line, what do you envision for those? I mean, are these concrete slabs with benches? Is there landscape?
With some furniture, a fire pit, and I think we were showing like a pergola type structure on the one side. So just.
I guess in the presentation, or at least in the documentation, I don't see any detail of that. And I mean, that's kind of what I think there's an opportunity to do that, to enhance those areas. But I really think that, this plan is so rectilinear, just so sharp. It's got so many edges. To try to soften a little bit, either with some of the geometry on the plane, on the sidewalks and landscaping, I think would really enhance the appearance for those that want to come in and actually buy or rent in this complex.
We gave some thought to those interior courtyard spaces and looked at it a couple of different ways. You could either, fill with some landscaping, or you could leave it open for residents to use in some other way to set up bago or some other, kind of outdoor activity they could use a nice open green space for.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what your market is, who you're going after. I mean, I don't know what the price point is, I don't know who your market is, and so, yeah, maybe maybe they alternate a little bit. Maybe one has a more open space, one has a more a relaxed or a softer feel to it. But I just think it just seems so sterile. I think there could be more done in those courtyards to just enhance them, and make them more attractive. Beautification.
Does anyone else have questions for the applicant?
I'm sorry,
yeah,
could I
please.
ask one more?
Yeah, of course.
The one of the first renderings that was put up on the screen there was actually a shot from, as you're entering off of John R., looking at your complex, kind of across the retention pond. That retention pond is pretty sad looking. And is there anything as far as planting that could tolerate some level of water in there that could, again, just enhance that? So because I don't know if you could put that slide back up. Quite honestly, that is such a turnoff to me personally. At the edge of the property that you're trying to enhance and market, is there anything that can be done from a landscaping perspective to help that?
The aerial is not doing this very much justice, and maybe it's the time of year that the image came from, but it's a well-maintained mowed grass. There's no, vegetation other than it's a maintained grass.
It's a vast area of what appears to be at sometimes a drought area when we don't have a lot of rain and the grass isn't really as green and lush as we would like to think it could be. I'm just, I think for the benefit of the development, to enhance something like that a little bit with some type of vegetation would make it easier for you to sell this product.
I don't disagree with you. Whatever we do, I want it to be top notch.
Yeah.
I don't do anything in Troy. I've been in Troy my whole life, and I don't do anything that isn't. And whatever. I personally am not a landscaper, and I don't know what would grow in because there is a bit of water in there at times on a big monsoon type rain.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what could survive that, but if there is something.
I know there are tolerant vegetation or plantings that could apply, but again, I'm not a landscape architect either, so.
But just rest assured, whatever I do, it's going to be top notch, even if this is not the apartment complex I wanted to do, but it's still going to be good. I don't want my name on anything that isn't. But,
You've got a good firm working with you, and I think they can come up with some creative solutions to that.
I think so.
Yes, Mr. Biegner.
Do you mind if we go back to the previous slide? It was mentioned that there's a dog park potentially. I'm curious if you guys could speak more to that.
Southwest corner?
Just beyond the parking, their guest parking area.
No,
Just a smaller dog run area where people can take their pets if they need to.
It just looked tiny to me from that slide.
What's the square footage? How big is it?
It was showing on one of the,
I'll show it, Mr.
It's on the
Biegner.
landscape plan. Get that
It's
up.
on the landscape plan. We'll get to it.
There you go.
I think it was that previous one that.
Yeah, it's right here.
It's kind of small. I guess I have a small dog, so. Is that the plan?
Yeah.
Small little dog park there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we just wanted to have a spot. I mean, I don't know whether people actually use it or how much often it gets used. I guess it remains to be seen. But we're just going to have things there for waste, cleanup and such like that.
My other comment would just be, I mean, we're all fans of development. We're all fans of your guys. It just does seem kind of square and straight and basic and simple. And you want to wow people. You want your customers to be happy about it. I see a lot of linears and perpendiculars, and that's just an example of. I did the little thing over here in the corner. I'd like to see it a little more. Wow, a little more green space that's used better for the family, the single person, the grandparent that might want these spaces. I think you're heading in the right direction, and that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Fox?
Yeah, I just want to echo and say I appreciate the comments from Mr. Tegelman and Mr. Biegner. I think that this is a good development. It's solid, at least in concept, and I think where it is missing kind of refinement on landscaping and green specifically. Whether I would like to see some more detailed plans for those parks, like potentially see some materials that are going to be placed, like maybe just some renderings of what the parks themselves along the south end would look like, including the dog park. And then also to kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Tegel was saying, I think there is a lot more that can be done in terms of like adding foliage and kind of adding more green and plant life overall to the development. So I do appreciate it. Personally, I'm at a point where I in no way would want to deny this. I'd rather postpone it. But my mindset is adding more green would potentially do this development a lot of good. So, thank you.
Mr. Hudson?
What is the dimensions on the dog park?
I'm sorry, say?
I'm sorry, what are the dimensions?
On the dog park?
Dog park.
Yeah, I don't see a dimension, but it looks like it's roughly 20 by 50 area, something like that.
20 by 50? You get a big dog, you can leap right from one end to the other on that size. Why don't you reconsider what you're going to use that space for? I'm not sure a dog park, in my opinion, is a good placement there.
Actually, that doesn't have to be the dog park. People would be welcome to walk their dog around the pond, or the pond is dry most of the time.
Well, use your imagination. I'm sure you can come up with something in that small space.
I have a few questions. for you, I guess. A lot of the things have been mentioned already, but the northern border, you have the 3-foot berm with a double layer of trees, which I think is good and effective. But it seems to me that the southern border is not as dense or thick, or I don't know, it wasn't clear to me whether there is a berm there. So why would it be a less dense buffer when you have that commercial building to the south?
Do you want to answer?
I mean, I think as far as that buffer goes, I think, there's a requirements in the zoning ordinance, and we were providing what was specified in the ordinance. I'm just checking real quick to see. So along the south side, north side, so one narrow evergreen tree per every 3 feet, or one large evergreen tree per 10 linear feet. So there's 959 linear feet of frontage along there. Divided by 10 is 95.9. So we provided 102 large evergreen trees.
Yeah, I'm not implying that you didn't comply, but we're trying to create the buffer, right? And I'm not sure that it's an effective buffer, because you also have the light, the noise, the odor that you're trying to block. The other side, the northern side, of course, you're trying to respect your neighbors who are, single-family residential, so they can appreciate that. It seems like you did more than what was required to protect them from that. But now we're talking about protecting the residents that you want to welcome into your community. So I would think that you would put an equally as good buffer or a better buffer than on the northern side, given that it's backing up to commercial. So I'm basically asking, would you guys be willing to consider making that a better buffer?
If you've been by there, I'm not sure if you have, but we have a huge berm.
Yep.
Right now. I hope to
Yes.
keep that, not have to build another one. Depending on how it all lays out, I mean, the berm is there, and there are all kinds of trees on the berm, and it's more than sufficient to yield anybody or block them from the commercial.
Okay.
But we may have to redevelop, depending on how it all, I haven't, that berm may be too big. It may protrude into the new development area. But again, we'll make it right, whatever it takes.
Right. Well, I think that would be important to know before we break ground, whether that berm's going to be there or not, because it's important that we know what that border is going to be, that buffer is going to be. But speaking of trees, it's always a red flag when I see that a landmark tree is going to be removed, and I know we have provisions.
Where's a landmark tree? I don't know about one.
Mr. Carlisle, I think your report mentioned that there'd be one landmark tree being removed.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yes, the tree survey identified one landmark tree.
Where? Which one?
I'll have to look, I don't know.
All the trees that are there, we planted. They're all evergreen. There's nothing, no old historic trees there. That area was all farmed for forever and ever. There's nothing like a 500-year-old oak or anything of that nature. It's all evergreens that are planted around the perimeter, nothing at all in the middle. So I'm not sure where you found a landmark tree, but
Mr. Bostic, it was based on your tree survey.
Pardon me?
It was based on your tree survey.
I'm sorry.
It was based on your tree survey indicated a landmark tree.
Our trees?
Your tree survey provided by PEA was one that identified a landmark tree.
Oh, okay.
There's one 18-inch tree
An evergreen tree?
being removed. I don't know which one that is. There's a lot of trees here.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of trees.
So I guess that was another thing. Then there were 141 or 51, I forget, woodland trees that are being taken down. And as you just said yourself, the trees are all on the perimeter. So it sort of begs the question why we're clearing the lot of all those trees and replanting smaller trees when we have woodland trees, which implies that they're bigger and more established and mature. So I'm not, and our zoning ordinance does ask that we not be clearing trees that aren't in the way.
I'm all with you on that. I don't want to do that either. So if,
But I think your plan is showing that you're eliminating them.
well, maybe.
Yeah, unfortunately, the existing evergreen trees are planted at the top of the berm, which is whatever, 50, 70 feet kind of into the property. So, yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't jive with, you know, our proposed layout. So we'd have to, unfortunately, remove those evergreen trees. I'm looking for where that 18-inch landmark tree is.
So it's hard for me to understand. I would need to see a rendering of what it would look like with the, because now you're talking about removing the trees at the top of the berm. You can't build an apartment at the top of a berm, which means that somehow that berm's going to be decimated down. So now all of a sudden I'm left wondering what exactly is that buffer on the southern side? So, you know, I'm just putting it out there. I would need more information on that. Another thing you had mentioned, you said tonight there's a direct route onto Big Beaver, and I would argue that there's nothing direct about that.
You can get directly out to Big Beaver is what I really meant to imply.
Yeah.
There's not like a roadway. You go over to our entrance where the stoplight is.
Right, so my concern, I have major concerns about that. You know, my kids play soccer back there through their travel soccer club, and so I know what it's like when the parents are coming up and they're parking and their kids are walking across into the field. That area is super busy all the time. So now we're talking about building a development with 118 units, and it's not a road, it is a parking lot. So you're basically dumping them into a parking lot. And it's not a straight shot out, which on the one hand might be a good thing, so they're not racing through, but they have to come down and curve around in front of the sports center, or they can come even further through the parking lot and curve around behind those other businesses that front Big Beaver to get onto that road that will take them out to Big Beaver. I have concerns about the safety, and I understand you own that southern property, so right now you're fine with it, but I think it creates a safety issue, and I do have concerns about that.
We could close that off, make it emergency access only, and just have the one off of Nancy Bostic as the main entry and exit, and have it for fire vehicles, or I wouldn't be opposed to that. It may not be that convenient for some, but
Okay.
whatever makes sense.
Looks like Mr. Fox has another question.
Yeah, I worry that if you do end up just like completely closing that as an emergency access, that will kind of affect the circulation overall on the site. But I do think Ms. Barakis's concerns are very fair. So I almost wonder if something maybe more like speed bumps or more like some kind of physical to like force traffic to kind of slow down as it's approaching the area where there are a lot of people in the parking lot. That way you can kind of keep the circulation while also addressing safety issues by kind of slowing vehicles down. So that's a thought.
We could do that. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to speed bumps. Some people, patrons of the ice rink, sometimes fly through there. And even in spite of there are all kinds of little kids there, and they're not people that are living in, since there's nothing in the back there, but people drive the way they drive, and sometimes it's not good. You ever been by you must, you live in Troy, you've been by elementary schools and middle schools at the opening time, closing time, cars every which way flying around. And it's part of life, but it doesn't mean that we can't try to do something to make it safer there.
Ms. Barakis?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I have the same concern that you have about circulating through the parking lot. I was curious, Brent, did OHM look at that traffic pattern at all, and do they have an opinion on that?
We just happen to have a representative of OHM sitting here in the audience, Stephen, coincidentally enough, and he can answer any questions that you may have, so it would be appropriate, Ms. Barakis, to direct any questions to Steve Deering.
Okay, I have one more question, and then I'll call Mr. Deering up.
Sure.
Just In terms of the back of those commercial buildings, are there any entrances into your businesses in the back, or is it basically just like a dumps, where they open up and put their trash and?
In the back of the ice rink?
Yeah, the Kroger, all of those, yeah. Because I'm asking because one of the renderings showed right in the middle, the pedestrian sidewalk coming, and it's basically coming to the back of these businesses, and there's really nothing there.
There aren't any. The businesses are the other side.
Right, okay.
And there's a major entrance to the ice rink back there.
So people do enter from the back?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And many, the regulars, they love the back entrance there. It's convenient parking, and you don't have to park way out in the parking field in the front. And
Okay.
and
Okay.
the whole ice rink is pretty much symmetrical. So you enter in the back or the front, you're in this same place.
Okay.
Before you dismiss my,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Kren.
that 5 acres behind the restaurant, what is that going to be used, what do you see
It's
happening?
I'm sorry, it's zoned for single family.
Okay,
So
so
it could have like 8 homes or so over there.
you
that would
envision
tie.
a development there?
It would tie right into Boyd Street.
Existing one, okay, thanks.
Anyone else have questions for the applicant before we get Mr. Deering up here? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us. And thank you all for voting for the Kroger gas. That assures Kroger will be at the site for many, many, many years. So I appreciate that.
Come on up, Mr. Deering. I think we've got some questions for you.
Good evening. I'm Steve Daring with OHM Advisors, and I'm a senior traffic engineer in the company. So
2 questions, but maybe start with the second one I had, the ingress and egress through the parking lot,
Right.
and the issues around safety and appropriateness of that from your perspective.
Okay. I'm actually going back up a little bit. The previous plan, when this was the so-called luxury apartments, it was, I believe, 247 units. And as part of that proposal, the applicant had had a traffic impact study taken. There were a few minor problems with these studies, but there always are. And once those were worked out, the conclusion of the impact study was, first of all, it was based on 2 points of access off of Nancy Bostic Drive, and then a second point of access that was basically behind the sports center and the Kroger. And with those 2 points of access, their presumption was that there would be enough traffic at Nancy Bostic Drive that that location should be signalized. Now we're fast forward to this plan. They've dropped the density immensely. They've still are, at least at this moment, showing 2 points of access. The western access, however, is no longer kind of in the middle of the commercial. It's been shifted to the west side. And we did a rudimentary analysis to show how much the peak traffic is dropping because of the reduction in density. If a more formal analysis were to be done, I think it would show that, well, with the original plan, the location of the second access, there was every likelihood that Nancy Bostic Drive was going to get an overwhelming amount of the traffic. And there would not be that much filtering through the commercial. Now we have it being shifted to the west, so less traffic. There's a possibility that will be less impacts to Nancy Bostic Drive. We have not analyzed it, but that can come later in terms of whether it meets signal warrants anymore. It might not. But we do know that if they come through the western side of the commercial along the arena, they have access to a traffic signal out onto Big Beaver. So with all that said, I can easily see both sides of the argument about whether they should have full access to the west of their site or whether that should be emergency vehicle only, turn it into EVA. If it was EVA, that makes it far more likely that all the impacts are going to be felt at Nancy Bostic and John R. And it might push that location back into the realm of needing a traffic signal at about $300,000 a copy. On the other hand, there could be a as convincing case made to keep it full access. It will give these residents relatively easy access out to Big Beaver Road, where they have access to a traffic signal to get out and come back in. And the fact that it's not really a straight shot to the major road, the serpentine nature of the path that you have to take is kind of built-in traffic calming. So, personally, this is a size development that it would make more sense, all other things being equal, to have 2 full access points. But I can also see the argument about having just the one and the other being emergency only. So I don't really come down strongly on either position, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about looking at it either way so that you can better make your decisions.
Yes, Mr. Baker.
Just one follow-up question. I guess my concern, Ms. Barakis raised it, I have it as well, is that parking lot can get crowded. My son played hockey, so we parked in the back, Mr. Bostic, and we went through the back entrance for all the reasons you said. And so I can see that area get crowded. So my concern is the potential safety issue in the parking lot, not at the corner of the light with Big Beaver with cars coming out of the development and circulating through the parking lot. And so I don't know, and I didn't hear you mention anything about that, so I don't know if your analysis yields any conclusion on that.
It is a little unusual that this arena has other points of access to the building other than the traditional front door. So you can easily see how you would have both vehicle and pedestrian traffic kind of all the way around the building. When you have the potential for conflicts between PEDs and vehicles in parking lots, one technique, especially if you have a long aisle, like represents the east-west on the north side of the arena and Kroger, one technique is you put in speed humps. I am not talking about the abrupt bumps that are only, a foot wide and are 3 to 6 inches tall. Perversely, if you put those in, it encourages cars to go faster because the shock absorbers will absorb that easier, and it's easier on the passengers the faster you go. I'm talking about the humps, where the base is anywhere from 12 to 20 foot wide. You're looking at least 4, if not 6 inches of elevation. And the idea is that it induces a rocking motion that becomes very uncomfortable to the occupants the faster they go. So that's why humps work and speed bumps don't. And then the only other point is that the longer the aisle, you have to have enough of them because just one won't do the trick. So if this was actually a road and you were looking at doing it, we would be looking at recommending having a hump every 400 to 600 feet apart. And that would a little bit on the shorter side would make sense for a parking area like this. So probably around 400, 450, something like that, spacing between them. The other thing is that you would want to very clearly demarcate where the PEDs are expected to cross. So high emphasis pavement markings that make sense, especially if you have doors where you're going to have people coming in and out. Make sure that it makes sense where you're asking PEDs to cross in context of where the access points in and out of the buildings are. So what you're doing is you're trying to create an environment that's easier for the drivers and the pedestrians to know what they're doing.
Yes, Mr. Hudson.
I'm following what you're saying, but I'm a visual guy. Do you have any overlays which show the commercial area with this project with the projected path of an exit? Where doors are, where a building is, where you might put a hump or a jump or whatever you want to call it. I'm really confused right now. I'm in sympathy with Mr. Faison talking about safety. If you've got a door as an entrance or an exit from a building there out onto a roadway, that gives me real pause, especially if you've got an ice rink. Now, I don't know, an overlay would help, but assuming there's an exit there which empties into the proposed roadway, you got a bunch of wired teenagers who are pumped up over a hockey game running out that door when somebody is making a drive-through there. This would be a bad problem in a lawsuit. I'd like to suggest that maybe we come back with an overlay so that we can all see what we're talking about.
That makes sense.
I thought it did.
You know, I'm not as familiar with the arena, so I'm not quite sure where the location of the various doors are. Some of them will be open access for patrons to enter and leave. Others might be emergency only. But it would make sense to put it all in context with a site, with a layout or a drawing that shows the parking, the cross-access with the residential, and where there might be reserves for truck delivery and other things like that, so all of it can be put into context.
It would be helpful.
So when you were talking about the speed humps, I got the impression you were talking about it along the northern side of the...
That was the example I gave, but it could,
Yeah.
it would likely actually be that as well as that western side of the arena leading down toward Big Beaver.
Okay, so another thought that I...
They wandering around there too.
Another thought that I had was people coming in off of Nancy Bostic Drive, and if they live on the far west side of the complex, instead of turning in and weaving through the complex, they might be just shooting down the back side of the commercial building and then turning right in to get into their, you know, their unit that's all the way at the end, which creates this other problem, which I hadn't originally thought of. But, you know, there's no I don't believe there's sidewalks behind your hockey rink or the Kroger, so people exiting that door are literally spilling out into a parking lot. There's a sidewalk?
There's a large sidewalk.
On the back side, the north side.
Look at the
Behind
rendering
Kroger.
that's up there right now.
Behind
There's a large sidewalk on the
I can't
north
see it.
side
You
can't.
of the ice rink.
It really can't.
Okay.
It's distance out.
Okay.
So it's not like you walk out the door into a parking or into a roadway. You
So maybe
walk
we
out
would-
to a sidewalk that's, I want to say is at least 4 feet
Oh.
wide.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bostic, if you're gonna, you need to come to the microphone so it can be caught onto the, sorry about that. No, that's okay.
Sorry. So anyway, there's a large sidewalk on the north side of the ice rink property. There's a large amount of landscape and then a sidewalk. And so you're at quite a distance from the time you exit that arena to get out into the parking lot.
Okay, so
And
maybe,
if you're parked anywhere along, like facing to the south, you're walking down the sidewalk. You're not walking, unless you're foolish. You're walking down the sidewalk and to your vehicle, wherever it is.
Okay.
So again, you don't walk out the door into a parking lot.
Okay. Yep, Ms. Malala-Holly?
Thank you. I have a question. Can you tell me whether there are any parking spots on the west side of the Buffalo Wild Wings building that I see on the map? Are there parking spaces on the west side?
The west side of yes.
Okay. What's the distance we are talking about? Just a rough estimate. What's the distance we are talking about? Because potentially, if your access driveway is going to spill over into this area, we are looking at drivers potentially driving to and from the apartment complex using this particular path.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the distance? Because I know you talked about a sidewalk behind the ice arena, but what about on the west side of it?
Sidewalk around there as well, all the way around.
All the way around, okay. Okay, thank you.
The only thing to add is that the parking along the west side of the building is across the aisle against the property line. The parking is not adjacent to the building on the west side of the building. There's the building, the sidewalk, the drive aisle, then the parking, and then the property line.
And that's the same thing on the north,
On
too.
the west.
Right?
Talking just
On the
on the
west
west
side.
side.
West, but also on the
That's
north,
west side.
right?
Just on the west side.
I thought you had parking.
But there-
but it-
There's
There's
no parking
parking.
next to.
Actually, there
is
is
parking.
parking. There's parking on both
There's
sides.
parking on both sides.
Okay,
Parking, yes, yes, there is.
okay.
And a sidewalk, a large sidewalk. So you park up to the sidewalk, or you park headed west.
Okay.
Sure.
I apologize. I didn't recall the sidewalk in the back because I go off to the soccer field and I come on the far west parking where there is no sidewalk, so I didn't notice that. But I still have concerns about the safety for pedestrians at those locations. But that's, you know.
Quite frankly, it's not going to be any different than it is. The site is full of patrons, full of children, walking with their parents, with their hockey bags, and we have a whole lot more patrons there than we will have residents in that site. But it's just that, people have to take responsibility for themselves and how they drive, and if they've got young kids with them, the kids aren't, hopefully not running out in traffic, and the moms and dads are hold on, let's be safe here. So it really doesn't, it's not going to make a huge difference. I mean, you've been there. You see how many kids are out, how many adults are there, and it's just it's part of a busy, congested life, and that's what we have now.
Right. I mean, I do see a difference when you're adding 118 units, not only of cars, but pedestrians. You said yourself that you were hoping that there's connectivity and that the people who live there are going to use the commercial buildings. So there's going to be increased traffic. I mean, you can't deny that. There's going to be increased car traffic and increased pedestrian traffic.
I'm not denying that at all.
Well, all right. Okay, Mr. Lambert.
Mr. Deering, I know my preference is to convert that western entrance into an EVA, but did I hear you say that if that were to happen, that the warrants would probably be met to put a traffic signal out on Nancy Bostic and John R.?
I've not attempted to replicate their traffic impact study, but they were showing that with the original plan, the original density, with most of the traffic biasing toward John R., that the preparers of the impact study believed that multiple criteria would be met for the installation of a signal. Here we have a lot less density, less traffic, but if the western access becomes an EVA, there will still be a small number of vehicles that will try to filter through to get out to Big Beaver, but the overwhelming preponderance will be going out to John R. There is the possibility, a relatively high likelihood that, yeah, you're going to meet signal warrants.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Hudson.
The west side adjacent to the ice rink, how wide is that sidewalk and the distance if it to be used as a road? Or is the road going to overlap the sidewalk?
Are we talking where the residential is
Now, I'm
initially
talking
coming out,
about
or
the
the long?
southwest corner of the project, which we're talking, yeah, that area. How wide is it?
I don't have a dimensioned
Got to be
plan
about
to-
55, 60 feet wide. Sidewalk's about 5 feet, 20, 25 feet, am I close for ingress egress, another 25 feet for parking? 55 feet, am I close, guys?
Probably
2419, 19.5, probably in that whereabouts.
60?
Okay, I'm satisfied there's enough distance there that a pedestrian and a car can still pass each other.
Yes.
Okay.
It would have met the city's requirements for any generic parking aisle in terms of the depth of the parking stalls and the aisle width.
No,
for
understand.
two-way
You've answered
traffic.
the question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have another question. So if it were to be an EVA on the southwest side and traffic were coming out of just that eastern, southeastern exit onto Nancy Bostic Drive, it seems to line up pretty well with the Kroger entrance. So would there be a sign that does not allow traffic to fly through the Kroger? Because then it's a straight shot. Well, it's not quite straight. There is a jog in the road, but they could get out to Big Beaver that way, which would still be concerning from a pedestrian and safety perspective. So would there be signage to require only using John R.?
You can ask for the signing, but it will not be legally enforceable.
Okay.
Quick question.
You have a question?
Yes. It's from Mr. Bostic. In all the years you've had that facility, has there ever been a pedestrian auto accident on those, like that back road or the west road? Has there been where a car hit a person?
never.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant or for Mr. Deering? All right, then I think we'll discuss it now as the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, Mr. Lambert.
Did you want to ask for any public input at this point in time?
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's not a public hearing tonight, but if anyone here from the public would like to speak on this issue, now would be the time. All right, so I don't see anyone coming forward, so we'll turn it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. Yep, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, I guess referencing the comments I made earlier, I mean, to me, I think there's just some missing pieces. You know, there's been questions about, Mr. Tagle brought up materials for the sides of the building, you know, having some further explanation and use of green spaces. I would like to see more of a, you know, concrete, this is what the parks will look like, this is what the green space will look like. And then I think what may also help the applicant is a site circulation plan that references this site in the context of the entire commercial plaza, because I think that would just help kind of get a visual on what the intention is for traffic flow and where, you know, potentially speed humps or EVAs or whatever mitigation tactics that might help there. I just think that we kind of need more information before we can really make a call on it.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I would like to chime in and second what Mr. Fox just now said. In terms of recreational amenities, in terms of some kind of a more accessible route across the entire development, and between the parking space and the townhomes, I definitely want to see more buffer. Some very concrete information I feel is missing in terms of how the applicant intends to reduce the noise. that potentially may come through. And definitely traffic flow, green space. I feel that this can be done, as Mr. Tagle pointed out earlier. I think they can definitely go back to the drawing board and see how they can rectify some of these issues that we just outlined.
Would anyone else? Yep, Mr. Kram?
Yeah, I'm going to refer to the site plan review standards. This is section 8.06, which outlines the site plan review design standards. This is number 1A, and it says, building design shall enhance, the key word is enhance, the character of the surrounding area. I don't see it. I don't see it enhancing anything around the area. Second part B says street fronts shall provide a variety of architectural expression that is appropriate in its context and prevents monotony. I looked at all the frontages of all those buildings. Two things. One, if you're on the street view, it reminds me of military barracks. If you look at the plan view, it looks like a circuit board designed for IC chips. They're all rectilinear, they're all in the same road. Just like an engineer would lay out a circuit board, that's what it looks like. I don't think it meets the design standards. I look for places like the Enclave, which they have nice rolling roads, curving, and the buildings kind of curve and into those areas. It looks inviting. It looks like you want to explore that area. I would not feel excited about exploring this. It just looks absolutely military barracks. That's my opinion.
Does anyone else have any input? Yep, Mr. Buechner.
It's been said, but I'm going to say a couple things. The ingress egress scares me, guys. What you have there currently is what it is. To add 120 homes going that direction just scares me. So the signage, we've talked about the humps, how that would go around the west side, how it could go through Kroger or shouldn't go through Kroger is what I would try to say. We're also, you've got green space, you figure that out, and you guys know what you're doing, but I think we'd like to see something more for green space, more creative. And the other thing I'd say is the walkability thing. I think it's there, but I think if you have one sheet that shows those red lines of where everybody can walk and add a little bit more around the retention pond. The more you give us, we're big on green space. I think it's because the citizens want the green space, walkability, and that safety feature would be my three things.
Okay, I'll just add it was mentioned, but just to reiterate also, I think we need to have a better understanding of the buffer on the south side and beef that up a little bit. And then I guess I'm just asking my fellow planning commissioners if we're gonna, it sounds to me like we might be leaning towards a postponement, but if that's the case, it would be nice to give the applicant some direction on what we're thinking in terms of what we think, or do we want him to come up with a few options, but are we thinking that we want it to be an EVA, or should we have them show us how it can, if they show us a circulation plan that meets our approval, or are we saying no way we want it to be an EVA? Do we have consensus on that? Mr. Fox?
I guess I'm of the opinion at the moment of letting the applicant, make an argument for what they think is best. I mean, they may come back with a plan, boom, EVA, said and done, or they might come back with a site circulation plan that adds more of the other safety features we're looking for. I drive up and down John R., and I think I can speak for a lot of people that another light on John R. isn't necessarily preferred. So if there is a way to try to save that other exit without increasing danger to people to the south of the build, at least give the applicant the option to explore that.
Okay, that's fair. Yep, Ms. Mulally.
I do like a second access, but I do see a lot of conflict with the one that we have in front of us. So yes, I would like to encourage the applicant to think about a second access with keeping safety in mind, safety as our top priority here, and movement of traffic and humans alike. I'm also in agreement with Mr. Fox. Second light, just off of Big Beaver on John R., I don't know whether that will be a good way to think about it. So if we do make it into an EV-only access, then what is the potential traffic impact is what I would like to know off of Nancy Bostic Drive onto John R. That's definitely a study that needs to be done. And if we do give the second access, then how are the safety measures that we just discussed as a commission will be addressed by the applicant? And the third thing that I would like to add is we would like to see some good renditions, some good 3D renditions, which are not in conflict with your landscape plan, but actually are complementing your plan in general. So 3D renditions always benefit us to get a better view of the project. I would highly encourage you to think along those lines. And as Mr. Tagle earlier mentioned, we would like to see some good, some more input into the design of this project. See if you can come up with more creative designs that would enhance the city of Troy's appearance.
Yes, Mr. Lambert.
I was going to float a resolution. I think that'll address everyone's comments, but you can always add on to it. I was going to move to resolve that the preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed John R. Commons townhome development located on the west side of John R., north of Big Beaver, Section 23, zoned MF multi-family residential district, be postponed for the following reasons: to address commissioner comments on 1, landscape buffer on the south side of the development, 2, landscape enhancements, 3, pedestrian amenities, 4, vehicular access at the southwest entrance, and 5, recreational amenities.
Second.
Could we add something in about saving, taking another look and seeing if we can save additional trees?
That's acceptable to me, if it's okay with the second.
Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it was motion made by Mr. Lambert, seconded by Mr. Fox with that addition about the trees. Discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Your homework cut out. Thank you all for the time.
Okay, so our next item of business is the Planning Commission 2023 Annual Report. Mr. Savidan, I should have asked you before we started the meeting, do we have to vote on this?
No.
It's just for our review and to, I remember last year, Mr. Lambert spotted something that was omitted. I'm wondering if anyone came up with anything. It looked good to me. Oh, all right, let's hear.
And I think your staff took an email from both me and Mr. Krent. We caught a couple of things that were incorrect in there. One of them was it included the subcommittee that we had, which actually was in 2022. So I think your staff took care of getting rid of that. And there was one other one, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
Yeah, the typo police were right on this when this went out. We had, yeah, it's not an excuse, but there was a lot going on last week. I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to see Fox News. We posted a 168 unit apartment building as do not occupy, and that took up a lot of our time. And there were some other things going on related to personnel, et cetera. So it was one of those weeks. And believe me, we appreciate it when you take the time to email us with those errors. It's much appreciated.
Go ahead.
I know what the other one was. We had Ms. Malala-Holly as our representative to the ZBA, but actually it's Mr. Fox. So I think that was the second thing.
Yeah, so the reason we do this, it's actually required by state enabling legislation. And do you think most communities do these annual reports? Do they? Okay.
They're required to.
Okay, good. So most are, but when we first started doing this over 10 years ago, most didn't. So it's good to see that change, but it's also really helpful just to realize all the things we accomplished as a board in the calendar year. We were busy.
Yeah, it's very impressive, and I'm actually relieved because I saw both of those things. The first one, I was like, really? Was that just this year that we were meeting those subcommittee meetings? And then I was like, gosh, Ms. Malala Holly, I could have sworn it was Mr. Fox, but I didn't even think to question it, but I guess I should have. So thank you, Mr. Lambert, for catching those, and Mr. Krent. All right, moving on to public comment for items that are on the agenda. Is anyone here would like to speak on anything on the agenda? All right, seeing none, I think we can move on to Planning Commission comment. I will begin with Mr. Carlisle.
Just throw me off usually. No comment, thank you.
Okay.
No comment.
Ms. Dufresne?
I actually have something. I was admonished by my boss, Ms. Bloom, for last week's, or our last meeting with respect to the resolutions. So going forward, when you have a resolution that it fails, where the motion's put forward fails, we do need to go ahead and do a motion in the opposite way and have so we have a vote on a resolution that passes. So last week's motion on the PUD, the motion failed. What we should have done is done the opposite motion, not recommending approval.
So when it didn't pass, we should have done it again, flipped around?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So that's it. Mr. Tagle?
Nothing for me.
Just a couple little things. Oakland County has a stormwater standards webinar tomorrow that you can connect into. If you need any help, go to the Oakland County website if you want to tune into that. And also, SEMCOG has an event, hang on a minute, I'm sorry. I was going to make sure that you got the date right. Yeah, it is tomorrow also. It's called Leveraging State Programs. I'm sorry, that was the wrong one. Wrong one. It was just the first one I mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Malala Holly?
I just have a quick question to Brent or Ben here. When an applicant does, or when they do a tree survey of the land, is there any kind of a secondary tree survey that we in the city also participate in or look at? Or we just take their tree survey and go with it, basically?
So a tree survey is required by our ordinance. It's required to be done and completed by a certified landscape architect and/or an arborist, which comes with a professional seal. And so we treat those as we would treat an engineering plan or something with a seal on it. I do spot check it, and I do go through it in detail to ensure that numbers add up. But we do not go out and do a second independent where we go out and survey the site ourselves and double check it. But we do spot check it to correct any errors. But again, it's done by a licensed landscape architect and/or an arborist that does seal the plans.
Thank you.
Mr. Lambert?
Just a quick question for Mr. Savadan. Is the master plan getting close to being on the agenda for a city council meeting?
Very close, Monday night.
All right. Wow. Excellent. Thank you.
That's great news. Mr. Faison?
Nothing from me.
Mr. Hudson?
Nothing.
Mr. Buechner? Mr. Fox?
So a quick ZBA update, even though we haven't had a ZBA meeting yet this year. I was reflecting back on the past year, and then I saw that our February meeting, there's kind of a repeated pattern since I joined the ZBA, where it seems the number one topic that we are running into is variances as they relate to setback requirements, to a point where we have seen enough, and I believe the zoning board has granted all but like one of the variances. So I guess I just wanted to bring it up in this forum in terms of should we be looking at maybe auditing our setback requirements, or because there's a lot of residents coming to ZBA and ZBA is granting variances for what they're requesting. So I guess I just wanted to bring that conversation to here to discuss, potentially bring up Mr. Savadant or go from there.
I guess I would need more information in terms of what types of variances, what, specifically. It's a conversation I could have with the ZBA liaison. But, and also whether, Well, I started to go down a path, I'm going to shut my mouth. I'll have a conversation with the ZB liaison and maybe Ben and talk about it.
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes, of course.
So ZBA, as you know, speaks through its resolutions.
Yep.
So, and I appreciate that you bring this to our attention, but you'll want to, in conference with Mr. Savanant and Mr. Evans, get a resolution, because this body will only take action on a resolution passed by ZBA. And if I may, I know I'm out of order. Mr. Fox reminds me, ZBA will have a new legal liaison. I don't know if Mr. Motzni mentioned that Ms. McMillan from my office will be taking over the duties for ZBA.
Thank you. Ms. Zarnecki, anything?
I have none. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Well, all I have to say is thanks for bearing with me today on my first meeting, and glad to have it behind me. No, just kidding. All right. Good night. We're adjourned.
You did well.
You did well.